We're here with Ted DiBiase, $1 Million Man who's just come off the man-to-man stage. And I know you speak to lots of people everywhere, but I kind of want to know what was in your heart and mind when you stepped up on that platform and looked at all those men?
Even before I went up there, I said, God, it's got to be your voice. I mean, it's my story, but, you make the emphasis where you need it to be. And, by the reaction at the end, obviously God touched a lot of people,
Yes.
in a big way tonight. I couldn't see real well, but there were a lot of people who stood up. So
I think God spoke through you powerfully.
Yeah.
I was really impressed when you talked about the power and the influence of your dad. And we don't hear that very often anymore. What's the most important thing you learned from him?
Well, his love for me was evident by what he taught me, I think, and he just, it's something that I know that he didn't just say, but it was demonstrated in his own life. Again, he never bragged or boasted about any of the things he did, and I've never done that with my boys. My boys hear all the stories about, oh gosh, they come and they say, gosh, Dad, we knew you wrestled, but these guys are saying you're one of the greatest pro wrestlers of all time. So they're finding it out from their friends, but just the man-to-man thing. It's like, guys, there's just things that we need to deal with, and if we don't deal with it, then it's going to ruin our lives.
There's something about a humble servant, even if it's your father, watching him be the humble servant, that changes you.
Yeah, so much.
You told us how you've made this transition from wrestling to evangelism. This is going to be an interesting question, but are there any comparisons between the two?
Travel.
Travel. You were prepped that way.
Yeah, and and the other thing, now that I've been doing it a lot more. I mean, I've actually been pretty dormant for, like everybody, because of COVID, but just getting rolling again. But in the beginning, it's kind of like a lot of churches wanted me, and I was going to go to anybody that wanted me, and little church, big church, and it was kind of like I always had a suggested like honorarium, but I said, look, if that's too much for you, just give me what you can, and it, I knew I had to trust God, and there were God will take you to the edge. I'm like, come on, Lord, I need another $100,
yeah.
Whatever it was, but it was part of the journey, and it just always worked out. It's amazing. Sometimes it was like I would go to like a mid-sized church, and they would take up an offering. Like, golly, man, this is going to be a good one. And I'd be disappointed. Then I'd go to some little church where there was only half a crowd, and they'd blow it out of the water.
Yeah.
So you just don't ever know.
It's interesting that God puts the $1 Million Man in a place where he has to trust for the next dollar.
Yeah. Absolutely.
He seems to do that.
Well, and the $1 Million Man, of course, was a character. But I mean, he's Scrooge, and that's like in wrestling, if you had a character and he wasn't the $1 Million Man, Scrooge would fit.
Yeah.
Because he was all about his money.
Yep.
And the other thing that I see in our culture is there's a lot more of that in terms of we got to get people to quit thinking about stuff. And start concentrating and really relying on God and get back to God. Because I just, I see it. I said it out there. I said, the numbers aren't growing. They're diminishing. And the other thing is that I look at what's going on in Russia and the Ukraine, and I said, Lord, are you coming soon? I mean, because prophetically, nothing else needs to happen
right.
for him to come. And, I don't think we're here for that great big one, but the great big battle where this large army comes from the north to try to take out Israel, and, in Revelation, and God miraculously delivers them. Well, look at the union between China and Russia now. Just doesn't take much to read into that. But of course, we can think whatever we want to, but ultimately, live your life every day like it's your last.
It gets your attention, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It certainly does. Let me ask you one more question, or actually rather have you speak to, and you touched upon this, the importance of a man getting a hold of his ego and what it takes to be a real man. Can you close with that for us?
Yeah, and again, my stepfather who raised me, Mike, he was an example of that. Here's a guy who had a scrapbook this thick that I never saw until I was like maybe 13. Mm-hmm. And I mean, just full of articles about him and about his wrestling ability and his, in amateur wrestling and things at Nebraska and everything. He never spoke about it, and I think that the fact that he didn't brag and boast, to me, it made him even bigger. If that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that's, it's like, yes, you want to be ambitious, you want to be the best you can be, but when you're rewarded like that, take it with humility, and you're going to have a lot more respect from people than the guy that goes out and is waving it all over the place like, yeah, look what I did, and.
Which is what Jesus did.
Yes, exactly.
He was the humble servant who washed feet.
Absolutely.
Well, you reminded us tonight of the miracle that God did in your life and the miracles that He's done in other lives. And I just want to thank you for reminding us of miracles.
Thank you, man. Great to be here.
Good to have you.
Thank you.